I'm Jessica Joyce, and this is Tino, one of our lovely UNH school horses.
In case you didn't already know this, lunging is a way to exercise a horse where the handler stands in the center of a circle and has the horse go around them on a lunge line. And you can see Tino here on the lunge line doing a nice little lunging routine, and it's a really good way to work on training the horse, improving their physical fitness, and some other things that we'll get into a little bit more in just a minute. So I wanted to talk about lunging for this video for a variety of reasons. One being it's a really valuable tool, and another being it's something I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about. Lunging, I think, is often stereotyped, at least in my personal experience, as being a way to calm down a lively horse. And it is. That's a perfectly valid reason to lunge. But so many people forget that lunging can be a way to exercise your horse if you, for some reason, don't feel up to riding. It can be a way to go ahead and actually work on some physical fitness with your horse without having to get on their back. It can be a great training tool, and it's also particularly useful for some mental focusing for horses who are easily distracted. So there's a lot of reasons you can lunge, and it's not always just to help a silly horse or an energetic horse settle down before you ride. So this is a Lunge Whip, and this one's actually mine. I'm a little bit picky about my Lunge Whips. I like them to be something that is fairly balanced. And to me, that means something that doesn't feel really heavy on one end or the other and doesn't want to tip out of your hand. Okay, so for lunging equipment, we need a variety of things. And one of those things is a saddle pad. This is just a standard, normal saddle pad. And when you lunge, you want to fold it in half. And I've heard some people refer to this as the hot dog way, or the long way. So it's like that. The next piece of equipment we have would be a surcingle. And this sits on the horse's back, kind of where you would want the saddle to sit. And I'll show you on a real horse in just a minute. And its purpose is to provide something to clip the side reins to, which I will also talk about in a minute. And it's a nice tool sometimes for young horses to introduce them to the concept of wearing a girth. Then we also have our side reins, which are stuck here at the moment. There we go. And these are used to help encourage the horse to reach through his back and take up some contact. And these will be attached to the surcingle and then clipped to these bit rings. Now we have our Lunge Whip, which I have already discussed a little bit, and a lunge line. It's important that this should be made of cotton. It should be some kind of webbing. Nylon lunge lines can give you a nasty rope burn. And then obviously we have this bridle, which you should note has a snaffle bit. This happens to be a loose ring snaffle. And it's important that you're lunging in a snaffle, just because they're gentle and kind to the horse's mouth. So here you can see Tino wearing his lunging equipment, and you'll notice I have not yet attached the side reins to the bridle, but they're just clipped to the surcingle to keep them out of the way. Notice the placement of the surcingle around his girth. It's very similar to where a girth would sit if he were to be wearing a saddle. So if you're choosing to lunge in a saddle, it's important that you secure the stirrups properly. You have two options for this. One is to go ahead and just take the stirrups off the saddle, or the other is to do as I have pictured here and run your stirrup up as you would normally, and then go ahead and twist the loop of the stirrup leather around the stirrup iron and bring the tail down through that loop and through the keeper on the saddle to secure it and prevent it from falling down. So I want to talk just a little bit more about side reins for a minute. And these are donut side reins, so they have this nice little rubber insert in them that gives them a little give. So it's kind of like your hands when you ride. You want to have a little give for the horse's mouth and create an elastic, supple contact. These work to achieve that same goal. And unlike some types of side reins, particularly elastic side reins, these don't encourage the horse to pull on the bit. Another note with side reins is they should be adjusted correctly if you are unfamiliar with this piece of equipment. You really ought to have the help of an experienced lunger, preferably your trainer or someone else who has spent a fair amount of time doing this. So now that we've talked about basic equipment and its purposes and safety there, I would like to talk a little bit about how to attach the lunge line to the horse. And there's a couple ways you can go about doing this. The first way is to go through the inside bit ring over the horse's pole and then clipping to the other bit ring. This is a good way to lunge a horse that you aren't familiar with, but it's a little bit more severe because when you pull on that lunge line, it puts pressure on not only the bit, but the horse's pole as well. Some horses really dislike this lunge line attachment, but regardless of that, generally speaking, for me personally, when I'm lunging a horse I don't know, this is usually my go-to because it gives me just a little bit more control. The next way we can attach the lunge line is by coming under the horse's chin. And to do this, I come through the inside bit ring, twist my line about itself once, and then clip it to the outside bit ring. And this is a really nice, softer way to attach the lunge line. It doesn't apply pressure to the pole, and a lot of horses actually are more comfortable this way. This is my go-to for horses I know, and I know how they'll react, and I know that they will behave, and I won't really need that extra help that the going over the pole can provide. I really like this for horses that are well trained and that I trust not to run off on me or do anything silly. So it's important to note that when I'm clipping things to the bit, I am always leaving the little lever on the clip pointing out. This is a safety thing for the horse, so should things get a little out of hand, he can't accidentally cut himself on that little prong on the clip, and you don't risk it digging into his face and causing him discomfort or otherwise injury. So in this image, you can see Tino is appropriately dressed for lunging. He is wearing all of the tack we talked about earlier. In addition, he's wearing some polo wraps on his legs to protect them. It's always wise to protect your horse's legs when you're lunging, just in case they get fresh and accidentally hit themselves in the back of the leg. Tino has a distinct dislike for boots, so I put polo wraps on him just to keep him happy. You'll also notice in this image you can see the surcingle and how it's placed on the horse, along with the side reins and how they are attached. It's important to note that Tino, his face is just ahead of or very close to vertical. You should never go any shorter than this. He is quite an advanced lunging horse, so he's very comfortable with this side rein adjustment. But a less experienced horse perhaps would need a longer side rein. So now that we've covered horse equipment, I want to just take a minute to talk about handler equipment. When lunging, we need to be safe too, and for us that means wearing a helmet. It also means wearing some sturdy closed-toed boots, such as paddock boots or hiking boots. Although tall boots would certainly work as well if that's what you happen to have. And a good pair of gloves. This can be some kind of leather work glove, it could be a riding glove, but just something to protect your hands. So learning to use a lunge whip can be kind of challenging. It's rather big and it's a little bit awkward at first if you're not used to it. So for me, I like to practice with mine and practice handling it and getting used to that feeling. So the best way to carry your lunge whip is with the lash tucked up under your armpit like so. It leaves both of your hands free to deal with the horse when you're lunging. And then when you go to lunge, you can simply take it out and let go of the lash. Make sure it's all untwisted. And there's your whip ready to go. So when you're lunging the horse, it's important to understand you never strike the horse with the whip. It's not something that's used to hurt them or scare them, but simply to encourage them to go forward. I like to think of the whip as replacing my leg. So when I'm lunging, I'm just kind of gently swishing it, following along behind the horse. If they're not listening to me and they're ignoring me, they're ignoring my voice and they're ignoring my whip, I might give it a little crack and encourage them to come forward. to change your whip from one hand to the other, I have it here, right? And this would be if I had the horse going counterclockwise in a circle around me. You bring it behind your back into your other hand, and now you're ready to go the other direction. It should never cross in front of you, as this might startle the horse. You never want to be waving it toward their face or anything. They're quite reactive.
A fun way to practice your lunge whip skills and accuracy is to go ahead and take a plastic water bottle or soda can and set it up and practice hitting it with the whip. The goal of this is to increase your accuracy and to increase your ability to make the whip go where you want it to go. I thought we'd go ahead and end on a little lunging demo, and this is Tino very kindly helping me. So you can see here we're working on some transitions between the trot and the canter. When working in side reins, it is important to keep them in trot and canter for the most part, because when walking, they're actually too short due to the way the horse carries himself. I do make a few walk-trot transitions very briefly, simply because he was not responding as well as I wanted to the trot-canter transition, so slowing down a little bit helped me. It is important to note that you never lead a horse with side reins on. As soon as you are done lunging, the side reins should come off and be clipped back to the surcingle. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned something from it.